Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out the radio version of the show every Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern on WDJY 99.1 in Atlanta. We also air on a podcasting network in Los Angeles called the 405 Media. There's a TV version of the show that airs on KMVT 15 in Silicon Valley at 8 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday nights. Both versions of the show air in other states. For these show times, plus past episodes, please visit the show's website at buildingthefutureshow.com. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Neville Boston. He's the co-founder and CEO of Reviver Auto. Neville, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think you guys are doing something in an industry that's, over 125 years old? Or was kind of created, and now you guys are kind of modernizing it. But maybe before we kind of get into that fun stuff, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Okay, so I'm gonna go one step beyond that. So
right.
My parents are both from Guyana. It's the only English-speaking country in South America. So my dad immigrated to this country in the early 70s, and I was born in New York.
Okay.
So I've kind of lived this interesting kind of immigrant experience. Even though I was born here, both of my parents immigrated to this country.
Sure.
And then an interesting thing is that all of my dad's sisters and brothers had their own business of some kind.
Interesting.
So being entrepreneurial has been in my blood from the beginning.
Sure. How many brothers and sisters do you have? Sorry.
I have 4 sisters and brothers.
Wow.
I was saying that all my father's sisters and brothers have a business of some kind.
Oh,
so it's kind of inbred in us, like it's kind of part of our infrastructure.
Yeah, DNA.
DNA, yes.
No, that's really cool, man. So you went to university in California. How did you kind of make your way west, and what got you passionate about taking what you took in university?
Okay, so my dad was a medical technologist, and my uncle had a lab here. So we actually moved west from the East Coast to Bakersfield, California, of all places.
Sure.
And I kind of went to school there, and then I went from there to Cal, which was just an amazing experience. I learned so much at the university and met some lifelong friends. But I studied poli-sci because I've always been kind of a political science nerd and business. Okay. So in a funny way, I'm doing exactly what my degree is in.
Interesting. Oh, I think that's great, man. So you graduate university. Walk me through your career up until kind of what you're doing now and maybe some career highlights.
Okay, so I was getting ready to go to law school. I'd taken my LSATs and all of that.
Okay.
And I had a good friend approach me about a business. She had been in an advertising agency, and she wanted to open up her own firm.
Okay.
I had been working at a law firm and had brought some business in, so I actually had some additional capital to invest. So I went to my godfather in San Francisco, and I put the business plan in front of him. I was like, would you invest in this? And he was like, yes. So at that point, I realized this was a good business. So I had my first company. It was called Crosswalk, and we developed campaigns for companies like Diageo and Moet Hennessy, and then worked with Microsoft and Pepsi. So we had all these large clients that we did business for.
Sure. Okay, so
and then from there, I opened up another firm that I invested in, and one did more FM marketing, the other one did more general marketing, and all of that was going swimmingly well until 2008, when there was a little crack within the infrastructure of the planet, and we had all of these companies like falling apart. Pepsi lays off, 5,000 people, Microsoft 3,000. So everything changed. And I had a good friend that was in politics here in California. And I was telling him I wanted to get into, a different kind of business, one that wasn't dependent on what the market was doing, a business that people had to have or had to do, that was kind of, insulated, from changes within the economy. And we started looking at products and properties that were owned by the state that were being underutilized. And a funny thing is that we kept coming back to the license plate. It hadn't been changed in over 100 years. And if you talk to anybody about their experience with, DMV or something along those lines, it was always, most times the negative one.
Sure.
So it was ripe for disruption.
Okay, so how did you go from kind of making that, or coming from like an idea, into actually building a company that you co-founded and now CEO of, to actually getting this thing like in physical kind of hands, ready for cars?
Okay, so the first thing I did is my good friend knew the deputy director of legislation for the state of California for the DMV. So he got a meeting with him, and what I thought was going to be a 5-minute conversation ended up being an hour-and-a-half conversation about the need for people to be able to go online and do registration, the ability to do it over air where you didn't have to send tags or stickers in the mail, and just to streamline a process that had been broken for a long time. And the next conversation we had was with his counterpart at the CHP. And we met with him and about 20 other CHP officers, and their feedback was really unique, and I think it really propelled us to moving forward. They were like, thank you for coming to us before you built it so that you could get our feedback. And because we were able to get their feedback, they took it on as if they were a part of it. They felt ownership in what we were doing because we took the time to talk to them before we built it. A lot of times, if you're in the tech space, you build something and then you throw caution to the wind.
Totally.
We did it completely backwards. We decided to actually talk to the constituent parties and stakeholders, and developed a relationship with them and got feedback so that when we built it, it would be something that would be legal. And that's the process that we went on. We met with state legislators, talked to them about it, got their feedback, and then we built our first prototype later on that year. Okay. And then we went through the process of getting legislation done.
Okay, so just to step back a second, just so people understand the concept, what exactly is kind of Reviver Auto, and what are you guys exactly building?
Okay. Reviver Auto is the company that has built the world's first digital electronic license plate.
Okay.
And initially, the thought process around having a digital electronic license plate, which we call the R plate, was the ability to do over-air registration.
Sure.
But once we started peeling the onion back, we realized there was a million other things that you could do with that technology, from doing over-air registration to doing Amber Alerts and doing unlimited specialty plates and cause plates, to being able to show if a vehicle is stolen. Sure. And then doing cool things like paying for tolls and parking through your license plate.
Interesting.
So it opened up a myriad of things that you could do from this technology. And then we started to realize that because you have real-time compliance, then you can have monthly payments instead of paying yearly. In California, in particular, the VLF fees, vehicle licensing fees, are going up by $25 to $175 per person. So the ability to be able to pay monthly, it could be a huge deal for businesses and for consumers.
Sure. So is the license plate like Wi-Fi enabled, or is there like a SIM card in there?
Yeah,
how does that work?
Yeah, it's LTE enabled. It has an accelerometer, gyroscope. You know where you are. So you know where the vehicle is traveling. You know how it's being driven. You have the ability to do over-air registration. So, like I said, you don't need stickers or tags.
Sure.
We have an RFID chip that's within the plate, which allows you to connect with parking and tolling meters. So you have this, this plate that allows you, this R plate that allows you to connect with the world around you.
Interesting. So basically, you have the technology to know if I'm, well, not physically, maybe me, unless maybe like my phone Bluetooth to it or something, but you could basically, where I'm getting at is you could basically know how much time somebody's in that car, right? So you could maybe even reach out to, insurance and say, well, this person only drives 20 minutes a month or like 200 hours a month, whatever, right? And like maybe even charge them related to how long they're actually in the car, right? And there's so many avenues you guys could explore.
Wow, it's really interesting that you brought that up, and that goes to a bigger point. I'm glad that you brought it up. So what's happening right now is that when you go to fill up your tank, and if you're driving a car that's not electric, there's a gas tax that's associated with that,
Okay.
and the gas tax is supposed to pay for the infrastructure of the roads that you drive on every day.
Right.
But because CAFE standards continue to go up, and you have now electric vehicles on the road, those dollars are not going as far as they used to.
Sure.
So what's happening right now is states are trying to figure out how do you accurately charge somebody who may be an Uber driver or a Lyft driver or somebody who lives 2 or 3 minutes away from where they work. So what's happening now is that all these states are trying to figure out like what is the right thing to do for vehicle miles traveled or road usage fee. And that's something that the plate can help enable because you know how much you're driving. So that information helps to show what you should be charged. You shouldn't be charged the same amount of money that, a trucker who drives for a living is charged. So there should be a way of equalizing that. And I think that that's something that this plate enables you to do because you have the mechanism to do that through the plate.
Sure.
But I want to back up and say something else as well. It's really important to know that we're pro privacy. Our big thing with our business is making sure that the people who use our product know how their data is being used or not used. Okay. Because I think there's been big issues with what's happened with Facebook, and I know internationally that Europe is really tied into like the usage of data and how it could be handled and the ability to port it out of a particular area, and all those things are important. And for us, it's really, really important that our users know that we protect and honor your information. Okay. And we basically let folks know how it's being used or not used. And it's just something that I thought it was important that I said totally. Because I think people out there are feeling kind of raw because people feel like they haven't been communicated, and that's not something that we do. We do the exact opposite. Sure. We're all about transparency.
Well, and to be 100% fair with you, like I have no idea what the DMV does with the information that they have about me, right? Like I assume nothing malicious, but I think people have no idea, right? But at least if with you guys, like you guys have a whole kind of software side that I don't know, is it a consumer side yet, or is it just kind of on the business side right now?
Okay, so how it's structured right now is that our customers are, dealerships is our first, distribution channel. Okay. So we've got relationships with Galpin Motors, Cooney, Chevrolet and Cadillac, Pendragon stores, Penske, folks like that, and they use it in two ways. One way is each dealership has their own fleet, and it's for loaner vehicles and for parts vehicles. Gotcha. And then there's an F&I process, which is finance and insurance, where they will actually sell the plate as with the vehicle as an add-on. Okay. So that's one channel. We have S&B, small and medium businesses that we work with that will utilize it, like folks like North Bay Landscaping or Morris Distributing or even Kaiser Permanente. You would use that within that context. And then you have the third one, which is FMCs, which are fleet management companies. And you have folks like LeasePlan or Element or that have customers like AutoZone or Comcast that would use a technology like ours. So we have those are the three distribution channels that we're using right now to getting the product out. Okay. And then what we're really going to be focused on is later on in the year really focusing on consumer. But right now it's those three channels. Gotcha. But you can get to consumer through dealerships.
Got you. Okay. So yeah, I guess where I was trying to go with that is like there's a software side of this that you could basically manage all this and see all the data that you know about me or the plate that it's connected to.
Absolutely.
So how does that kind of work?
So we basically have R Connect, two products. We have the R Plate and R Connect. And R Connect is a portal that allows you to see how your plate is operating, also get you connected to the DMV if you wanted to register your vehicle, or if you want to have a specialty plate or a cause plate or a sports plate, you have the ability to have that through, R Connect.
Okay.
So we're looking at it as a portal that enables you to be able to do things like, change your plate, update your plate, get a specialty plate, the ability to pay for your parking and your tolling. You can do it through that process.
Right.
We have it on the web, and then we also will have an app.
So how does it exactly work? You have a bunch of like art plates that haven't been set up, still in the box. Do I just pull one out and then can I activate it myself and get kind of a plate set up and ready to go and then just put it on the truck, or do I still need to go into a physical DMV?
No. You can do it all through your portal. So
Okay.
basically, what happens is that if you say get your plate at a dealership, you would actually have that plate, registered in the same way that you would do. We would query the DMV to make sure the VIN number matched,
Okay.
and then a plate number would be basically sent to your plate, and that would be updated.
Sure.
And then you would be, legal to drive and do whatever you would like with your plate.
So within
And
minutes,
then,
basically.
yeah, it's a very seamless process.
No, okay. I'm just trying to get it's like, this is obviously not, there's no visuals, so I'm just trying to describe through audio, like how this kind of works. So like, I'm looking at the site right now, but walk us through how you describe kind of the plate, because you have a California plate on your site and you have, you're showcasing that, but it looks to me like you basically have the same information with the ability to kind of change the screen out or make the numbers and stuff, or the numbers and letters smaller, to maybe, like you mentioned, Amber Alert or something like that. But walk us through kind of what types of stuff you can showcase on the plate, and how is it similar and different from like a current plate?
Okay. A current plate is a piece of, stamped tin, and basically what you have is the image is what it is.
Yeah.
The difference with a digital plate is those formats you can change. So
Sure.
when the vehicle is in motion, it's just a license plate, because the first and foremost what it needs to be is compliant, and it needs to be a license plate.
Right.
But when the vehicles actually stop, you have the ability to push, targeted messaging to the plate. It has to be legally parked.
Right.
So, I mean, you can use the plate as a parking meter. When you get too close to, if you're going to be parking, it indicates that, you've connected and you paid.
Okay.
You can use it when you're driving through a toll road, because you can have, it's an RFID chip, so you're able to, actually, pay when you go through. It's part of the plate of itself.
Okay.
So you have the ability to change banners at the bottom, to say, go Warriors or anything like that.
Okay.
So there's all these different things that you can physically do with the plate. You would have a library of information that you could choose from that you could push to the plate. But it's only when the plate is parked. It's not when it's in motion.
Got you. And then obviously you could
So
push.
that's
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no. What are you going to say?
I was just going to say, so you could but you could update like all the plates across a fleet in a matter of seconds. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. That's the reason why you would want it. So if you are a dealership or you're a fleet owner, you don't have to worry about having people go and physically change out stickers or tags or anything like that. You can remotely update your fleet, which is a huge benefit, because the amount of time, energy that's wasted on menial tasks, you don't have to do anymore.
Sure.
You can digitize and streamline your fleet that way.
No,
And then you'll know how your
go ahead. Keep going. Sorry.
And then you'll know how your vehicles are being driven, and and what issues may be coming up. The thing that's really nice about it is it's one platform that you're using. You're not having to go into another app or something else in order to pull data and information. You're able to see it in one fell swoop. I think that's the real benefit of having this technology, is the platform, is our Connect. You have the ability to do your parking, your tolling, your registration, your messaging, all of that is on one platform. And
Sure.
that makes it easier for you to manage, your business in what you're doing.
No, 100% agree. The other thing I'm curious then, do you have enough technology, or could you put enough technology in the plate to predict kind of maintenance for a fleet? Like if you're like, this truck goes, I don't know, on gravel roads or up and down hills all day long, that like it might need new tires sooner than kind of normal, or it's probably ready for an oil change, or like just can you predict some kind of general kind of maintenance stuff?
Absolutely. We could do all of those things because again we have GPS inside the vehicle, we have LTE connection. We know how far you're traveling. We know based on the data and information that you put in, how many miles you need to go before an oil change or when tires should wear out. All of those things. You have the ability to do all of those things through the platform.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, like that's where I think, not saying like the whole thing isn't interesting to begin with, but I think that's where it gets really interesting from like a cost savings, like preventative kind of stuff. Because especially in maybe states that, get snow or it gets super cold, like the last thing you want is to have to get a tow truck out in the middle of nowhere if you can prevent like, oh, this car might break down in the next few weeks because it needs oil or the tire or like, right? Like if you can kind of do preventative maintenance, you could potentially save a lot of time on top of all the other benefits.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the thing that I think we're doing differently is we really engage with the people that are, are utilizing the product or interested in being a part of it. And we did that early on. Like we met before we built, as we were building it, we were meeting with fleet managers from all kinds of businesses and getting their feedback on things that they need and, and looking at services that weren't actually providing that. And we built it based on the feedback that we were getting from people who actually used it every day. So it's like we tried to be really thoughtful and engage with people that have been in the business for a long time and have been around a lot of different products that work sometimes but don't work for their needs.
Sure.
And we wanted to build things that people want to utilize. And it's not just about having a million different things. It's about having things that actually affect your business.
Sure. No, I 100% agree. So I want to dive a little bit into kind of the hardware itself of the plate. Like, how do you describe it? Because it's like it's basically like a e-ink screen. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so you think about it like a Kindle,
Okay.
or Kindle Light, because our version, the R Plate Pro, it's actually connected to the vehicle.
Okay.
So in the evening there's a light that illuminates the plate.
Okay.
So it has a backlight. You also have, like I said, an e-ink display. You've got protective glass in the front that's really robust. And then it's basically has, like I said, the accelerometer. It has the brains of the actual plate, and then it has a backing plate that you tow into when you put it on the vehicle that helps to fasten it and keep it in place.
Okay.
So it's a well-built piece of technology. It's IP66 rated for wind and water egress. It will survive in temperatures from -40 to 85 C.
Okay. Wow.
So about 180 degrees. And it's really robust, and we've tested it in a lot of different environments. We're really excited about it. The way that it holds up and lasts.
Sure.
And then on top of it, it's a beautiful piece of technology.
No, I think that's great. And then what are you guys using for software on the plate?
What do you mean?
Like, you got to be running some sort of software on the actual license plate? Like, is it Android? Is it like a version of Linux, or what are you guys actually running on the plate?
Yeah, it's a version of Linux. It's
Okay.
not Android.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And then I'm assuming you guys could push, obviously, updates to the plate.
Over the air activations. That's part of it. I mean, if you're going to be able to do registration, that's one of the things that you have to be able to do.
Sure. Interesting. Okay. So I'm curious to get into a little bit of the actual manufacturing process. You mentioned earlier you guys obviously had to build a prototype, but I'm curious to know, like, I know how, well, I've never actually done it, but I've had people on the show that have talked about how tricky actually going from like even a proof of concept to a physical, first version of the product. But just for people, I'm curious to know how many kind of iterations or kind of prototypes did you need to actually do, and how did you guys actually get this thing kind of manufactured into having kind of the first version of this thing?
Well, one of the things that we did early on is that we brought over the former senior vice president of product for GoPro.
Oh wow.
And yeah, so we were able to utilize him and his team. He was able to bring his team with him, and so that's how we built the new plate. Initially, we used LCD technology because we had about, I would say, 3 iterations before he came on board.
Okay.
And then he kind of reworked the entire plate and was able to develop a product that was scalable. So we work with WNC out of Taipei as our contract manufacturer.
Okay.
And then we're also working with a group called NVD, New Vision Display, that's out of Shenzhen, China.
Okay.
They've been, fantastic as a partner working with us.
So did you make a few trips over to China, or have you ever been? I'm always fascinated to see if you actually went to the manufacturer.
Yeah. Well, I haven't been,
Okay.
but my chief operating officer's been, and my VPs of hardware. They've all been there to make sure that the product is operating and working the way that it needs to. But I haven't made a trip yet. I'm supposed to be actually going in the next couple of months.
Okay, but I guess the point is like you had somebody from your team actually go there and at the plant and kind of see.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, to oversee, make sure that quality control. We have a quality control director that basically made sure that all the parts and everything worked the way that they needed to, and they were at the right quality. So yes, all of that was had been overseen. Because these guys have made millions of GoPros, and before that, like Motorola phones and all the rest of that. So we have a really seasoned, uber smart group of individuals that understand hardware manufacturing. One of the really, really big hires that we got as well was Doug Mannix, who came from GoPro, who did all of their supply chain.
Oh,
so
interesting.
the deals that we were able to get with manufacturers were deals that a company 50 times our size couldn't get. So we were really, really fortunate to be able to get some really, really quality people in early as we were building things out.
Sure. No, I think it's great. So I know obviously you have a bunch of states that have kind of adopted the plate, and you even mentioned early on in the show that you basically went to kind of the states first, and so you've done a really good job at kind of leveraging the public-private partnership. So how did you kind of go about kind of bridging that? I know you had some connections that made some introductions, but it's a lot more complicated than just having a quick meeting with somebody, right? So how do you kind of do that? Because I think very few people are successful at actually kind of bridging, the public-private partnership, or they give up before they succeed at it.
Yeah, no, you know something, that's an extremely valid point that I think most people don't get. If you really believe in something, then you've got to, kind of stick the course and continue to work. And that's what I did. I believed in what I was doing and what the company was about, and I just developed relationships, and it didn't happen overnight.
Sure.
I incorporated the company in 2009.
Okay.
So it took, years of working, talking, partnering in order for us to get where we did. And I invested the money. I mean, I had to invest money and time in order for it to work. Sure. Most companies would not do that because, they're looking for a return right away. But there was a vision to say, like, if we did this, this could be really huge. And, it's the right way to develop a partnership, because we have to bring value to the partner that we're working with and vice versa.
Sure.
And I believe that I really spent time thinking about that and studying and going to committee meetings and talking to state legislators and working with the DMV and working with the CHP and working with the Department of Transportation. And that was all part of the process, law enforcement. And it was just a continual process of being there, explaining what we're trying to do, working with them to help fix problems that were available, And now it's a relationship that's really symbiotic. It's like if there's an issue that comes up, they have no problem calling me
Sure.
and saying, "Hey, I've got this issue. Can you help? Develop a fix for it?" And it's back and forth. So it's the right kind of thing. And I think most people don't realize or think that state agencies and bureaucrats are smart, but they are, and they really care about their constituents, and they really care about what they're doing. And if you help them and work with them, then there's positive things that can come from that. And I'm just a huge proponent and very thankful for the folks that worked with me and allowed me to help build this business.
Sure. No, I think that's really good advice, right? Because, and you mentioned it earlier, but I think it's worth stating again that like they felt like they were basically building the plate with you guys instead of you just trying to like cram it down their throats saying, you need this, you need this, you need this, buy this, right? Like they felt very much like they were a part of it basically before it was kind of a real physical thing. And so that obviously makes it a lot easier. And then if you have these ongoing relationships with them where they feel like they can call you if a little issue comes up, I think that's really good advice for people out there that are looking to do something where, it's kind of state or kind of nation or even kind of global changing, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it only works if you're willing to work.
Sure.
And it
Fair.
only works if you're willing to listen. And that's, I think, another thing, too. It's like if somebody's telling you something, listen to what they're saying. They're saying it for a reason. And I think that I pride myself on, I have one mouth and two ears. I listen twice as much as I talk. And it's important for you to be able to do that and really hear why they're saying it, because there's a reason. And then in addition to that, it was a process that was really fun because they helped to be a part from the beginning. And then there's an appreciation because I want no credit for anything that's done. I'm just looking for freedom to operate.
Interesting.
All the credit goes to them because the only thing that I'm wanting is the ability to, have my place as an option. Okay. Not something that's mandated, but something that's an option. Because I believe that if I build the right type of product, that you'll want it.
Sure.
And I don't want to feel like, somebody is forcing somebody to get this product, and that's good for my business model. No, it's completely the opposite. I need to build something that has value that brings people to it.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's fair. It's kind of a little bit of the Apple model, right? Like you don't need. You don't even need a smartphone, to be honest with you, right? Like, well, you can maybe even argue you don't even need a phone, but let's say, I think majority of people would say they need a phone, but I think you don't need the top of the line smartphone, but people buy it, and obviously Apple's one of the most valuable companies ever, so it's working, right? So I understand that. That makes a lot of sense, right? Like if you build a really good product, people are going to buy it. Yeah, it's interesting. So you obviously got this in a bunch of states and you have some international kind of interest. How did you kind of go about from getting kind of states finally on board and then moving to other states? Because obviously, you were talking to people in California, but how did you start getting it into other states and then kind of beyond?
So early on, one of my advisors was the past president of AMVA, which is the Automobile Administrators for the U.S. and Canada.
Okay,
and
nice.
They basically set the standard for all DMVs. So worked with him and was able to get access to a lot of DMV directors across the country. And once I did that and started going to their events, I started building relationships. And there was the Amber International Conference in San Francisco last year, and we had a big booth there. So we have 42 states and territories come by our booth.
Oh, wow.
And from there on, things have just taken off. So we're in California and Arizona.
Okay.
We passed legislation in Texas and Florida, and we'll be in those two states later on this year.
Congrats, man. That's great.
Quarter. And then we'll have another 9 states that will be doing a pilot or something else in before the end of the year. Oh, and wow. That states like we're talking to Oregon, and we're talking to Colorado and Georgia and Washington and Maryland and Pennsylvania and in Michigan and Illinois, and I mean, and we have all of these states like coming to us wanting to be involved in what we're doing, and Nevada. We'll be in Nevada next week. So
Nice.
it's a situation where things are beginning to grow upon one another, and we have a solution that helps them solve problems that they haven't been able to fix. So it's a good situation because
Sure.
it's not building just an app that is cute to have or nice to have, but you're actually building a product that solves real problems.
Yeah. Well, and you're saving money, right? For the state
Right.
and for
Exactly.
business and potential and the
Exactly.
consumer when it's actually released.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. Yeah, no, that's really cool. So you kind of mentioned to me before we got started, you're also kind of moving outside of North America, which is super exciting. Do you want to maybe talk about that?
Absolutely. The man, it's so interesting. So we after we had made an announcement about a fundraise back in November timeframe, I believe,
Okay.
we started getting inundated with folks from other countries like Sweden and Indonesia and Malaysia and Singapore and South Africa and Brazil and Dubai and Qatar and all these different places, and Canada. We started getting inundated back and forth, and we reached out. Dubai, some folks from Dubai reached out. We started a dialogue. That took about a month and a half. When my chief operating officer was heading to China to check on the product, and then heading over to Taipei, he stopped off in Dubai and met with RTA,
Okay.
the Roads and Transportation Authority for Dubai, and our partner down there, Team Target. So, 3 weeks later, after that meeting, we have a POC, a proof of concept that we signed with RTA,
Very cool.
and it sent out a press release a couple weeks ago, and we have kind of a plan built out to to prove out the technology there, and then to roll out products hopefully at some point next year.
That's awesome, man. Congrats. That's huge.
Yeah, no, it's really big because it's interesting. Dubai is doing it right. When I hear conversations around autonomous vehicles and everything else, I hear it, but it doesn't really resonate here
Okay.
for one reason. Nobody's spending money on infrastructure.
Sure.
There's so many things that need to be changed in order for those vehicles to be supported by these roads.
Sure.
If you look at our roads, I mean, they're not in the best shape.
Sure.
And if these autonomous vehicles are supposed to be able to read and understand different scenarios and circumstances, you've got to actually build infrastructure that actually responds back to it.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I mean, when I hear about autonomous vehicles, and it all sounds good, and people are putting a ton of money into it, I would say the person that's really going to win is the people that put money into infrastructure, because something's got to support what it is that you're trying to build, and I don't see how you can do one without the other. And
100% agree.
what
Yeah.
Dubai's doing, yeah, what Dubai's doing that's different is that they're pumping tons of money into their infrastructure, so they're building smart cities. So, it's either going to be DSRC or it's going to be 5G technology. I'm not sure which one's going to win out
Sure.
as far as the connectivity platform. And you've got to have V2V, vehicle to vehicle, and vehicle to infrastructure communication going on to really have a smart city and really enable and support autonomous vehicles.
Yeah.
Until we're really doing that and spending that money, then it's a nice thought.
Yeah,
but
it's a
I don't
novelty,
see
right?
it having
Yeah.
yeah, it's a novelty.
Yeah, that's interesting because I test drove a Tesla a couple years ago, and like I tried the autopilot mode, and it was interesting. It took a few. I felt more comfortable, like faster than I thought. But I know other people that said that they've tried it in other cities where kind of lanes kind of just merge together, and like the car just freaks out a little bit. Like you can't have that stuff, or there's been a bunch of stuff in the news lately where sadly people have actually died in that mode, or got killed by autonomous vehicles. So we're clearly nowhere near that yet, right? And I know there's a whole huge debate, and I don't really want to go down the political side, but to your point, like, I think it just strengthens your right. Like, you need to build everything around the car just as much as you need to build into the car, right?
Right. You've got to have a support infrastructure that is going to be able to communicate with the vehicle that, as smart as the vehicle is. I mean, in order for you to really feel secure that you have a system that's going to work long term.
Sure.
Because there are going to be so many scenarios that come up based on where the infrastructure is now that the car is not going to be able to react to. And what it's going to do is it's probably going to just seize up or make a decision that, you wouldn't make as a driver because you understand variations that happen within environments and on roads. So it's a scary thing for me.
Sure.
And I can understand, why there's apprehension within states because, what happens if something happens? How do you deal with that? And how can you even talk about mass deployment without really talking seriously about a huge infrastructure play that helps to build up our infrastructure so that it can support that?
Sure. And then the other issue is like weather conditions, right? Like snow and ice is
right.
way different driving on than, just like a nice sunny day in California.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And how do you deal when you don't see the lines on the road?
Yeah.
I mean, because
totally.
It's like when you start thinking about all of those things and, and all of those, touch points that have to be in place in order for the car to feel comfortable in that space, I just think that we're far off.
No,
because I haven't heard anybody say anything about making a huge infrastructure play to be able to support where we believe, vehicles are going. And I mean, if you start looking at that, from, the government is who invested in computers initially in order to open up, the internet and the ability to build computers. And, even when it came to fueling, I mean, the investment that went into that for people to actually start, being able to get, petrol. And then you start talking about like solar. There has to be an investment in order for the people in the private sector to be able to feel like they could put their money into something that they're not going to lose, because businesses are in business to make money.
Totally.
So if they know that they're going to be able to get some sort of write-off or it's discounted in some way, they're not going to spend the time or the energy or resources to invest in a particular area. So when I start seeing something from states or from the federal government that says this is where we're going, and we're putting together these large grants, or we're giving huge tax breaks in order for you to spend money in these particular areas, then at that point I'll say, okay, that's the direction we're going in. Until I see that, it's just great talk.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you. So I think it's a good segue. You said you've been doing this since 2009. How did you guys kind of fund this? Did you self-fund? Did you raise some money? I know you guys are looking to raise some more money. Like, walk us through that kind of journey.
Okay, so what we did is from 2009 to 2016, we raised convertible debt. So it was friends and family and high net worth individuals that believed in the concept and idea that we were able to put together about $5.5 million of convertible debt.
Wow, congrats, man. That's great.
Thanks, man. In January of 2017, we raised our first institutional fund, which was a Series Seed.
Okay.
Not C, but Seed. And we raised $7.5 million.
Wow.
And then in August of the same year, we raised a Series A. And we ended up raising a total of $12.5 million in a Series A. So what we're going to be going out and doing here, shortly is raising a Series B.
Okay.
And we've got a lot of interest in the Series B because we're going to use that to really be able to scale out the business, both domestic opportunities and international opportunities.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So if there's anybody listening that wants to maybe invest in it, like, does it have to be in North America? Where are you guys kind of looking?
This is a funny thing. One of my largest investors is in Canada.
Okay, interesting.
I've got our largest investor is actually out of Australia.
Oh, wow.
So I've got, several investments out of Australia, Canada, and then of course the U.S.
Okay.
So I didn't do the traditional, Sandhill road,
Sure.
march. I realized that there's money in other places, and a lot of times, other places, other countries don't get the same opportunities that we get here in the Valley.
Sure.
So I was very keen on breaking the mold and going other places to be able to get funds, and it's actually really worked out. And we have a very diverse group of investors, and and with that, board members.
Sure. Well, and then it also helps you get into those countries easier, right? Fair enough.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
So I'm curious. I'm Canadian. I actually live in Canada. How did you go about finding kind of investors in Canada and Australia? Because, well, obviously Canada's not that far from the Valley. It's a few hour flight, depending on where you go in Canada. But how did you find somebody in Australia? Because that's, like a day flight.
Yeah, no, for real, man. It's like 15 hours. So what happened was is that my EVP of strategic partnerships is Australian, a
Okay,
gentleman named
interesting.
Alan Cooper. Yeah, so he put me in touch with several people. Like he put me in touch with Stephen Polk from RL Polk, who's an investor. He put me in touch with Ernst Lee,
Okay.
who's the former CEO and president of Mercedes-Benz in Canada, Australia, and the U.S.
Oh, very
He
cool.
also put me in touch with Simon Sheva, who is the managing director of the ACK Group and Legates, and he actually helped lead our round,
Oh, okay.
both rounds that we raised. So that's the Australian connection there. And
Okay.
then we had people like John Thompson, who is the chairman of Microsoft, that has been very instrumental. And then now we have Ken Denman, who's our chairman of the board, that his company he sold to Emotion that did facial recognition technology,
Oh, wow.
and he's on the board of Costco and Motorola and Lending Club and just a bunch of other companies.
Wow.
But he's like fantastic. And then we had folks like Nick Brathwaite from Walden Riverwood Ventures and from Flextronics. He used to be the former CTO. So we were very fortunate to get a really diverse and really smart group of individuals that, one, invested in the company, but two, are part of our board. So we've been really, really fortunate that way. I would say our board is as good as any Fortune 500
Oh,
company.
yeah. They're huge kind of names and companies. So for people, like, how did you get such kind of big names and people on your board?
It's a funny thing. If you believe that you can get access, then you create the access.
Sure.
And
100%
and what I
agree.
mean by that, yeah, no, and what I mean by that is that I mean with like John Thompson, for instance, I'm part of Silicon Valley Leadership Group, and it's a kind of a public advocacy group,
Okay.
and he was being awarded something, and he was being awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award,
Wow.
and I heard him speak, and after he spoke, I asked him, I was like, hey. Very impressed, by everything you were able to do. It was like I've got this, company that I'm building out. I'd love your opinion on it. And the thing that I've always been impressed with him is that he gave me his email address. I emailed him the next day. He got
Okay.
back to me within an hour.
Wow.
He is a person that makes time for people. That is just an amazing trait of, I think, highly successful people.
Sure.
Is that if they give you something, they actually really mean it.
Yeah.
And he introduced me to a lot of people like Ken Denman, who's on my board, Michael Marks, and that's how I met Nick Brathwaite from WRB.
Right.
Michael Marks used to be the CEO of Flextronics. He was also the CEO of Tesla for a while. He has a huge company that, just got, several $100 million. I think, Qatar. I mean, he's doing so many interesting things. But I was connected through John Thompson. He helped to get me connected with all these different
Sure.
people. And from there, I just developed relationships with them individually. And I've been able to use that to build out the company.
Yeah. It just kind of snowballs, right? Like you just need one person, and
You need
yeah,
one
yeah,
crack in the
yeah.
dam for
Totally.
it to break.
No, I think that's really good advice because I think sometimes people think that some of these people are so like untouchable, right? But
I
I
think
think,
inaccessible, and it's not true. Because
yeah,
the whole thing is they're a person like you. They put their pants on one leg at a time,
yeah,
and they tie their shoes, and it's a situation where if you ask, all they can say is yes or no.
totally.
It's pretty binary that way.
Yeah, and I also think too that a lot of successful people are willing to help other people that they believe in because somebody helped them.
Exactly.
Or many people
Exactly.
help them, right? That's probably a better statement. But yeah, so I think like even just personally, I can kind of almost say the same thing. There's people that I've reached out to that I was like, there's absolutely no way I will hear back from this person. And then I've had it where it's taken, 20 minutes, or I've had it where it's taken maybe even 2 weeks or something, but they write back, and if it's take 2 weeks, they like apologize, and you're like, well, really? Like, I'm just shocked that you even wrote back to me. You don't have to apologize, but I think that's great, man. So,
No, I've been very fortunate in that way. I mean, it's just that
well, you put
I'm
yourself
just a
out there though,
person.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the biggest thing is that if you don't show up, you'll never know. So
Totally.
anytime I have, an investor or an advisor say you need to be someplace, I'm always there because you never know who you're going to meet, what relationship you're going to develop that over time can help benefit both of you.
Totally.
So for me, it's just like I'm always, if somebody tells me I need to be there, I'm there. And
Totally.
it doesn't matter if I'm dog tired or what's happening, you've got to show up. 90% of life is just showing up.
Yeah, 100% agree, man. I think that's great. But sadly we're out of time, so let's close the show with mentioning where people can get more information about you guys.
Go to www.rplate.com, rplate.com, or go to www.reviverauto.com. And Reviver is spelled the same way, forward and backwards, just to make sure you have it right.
Oh, okay,
But
interesting.
you go to our website and you'll know and find out everything about us, the states that we're coming into, where our plates are available. Like I said, we're selling them at Galpin Motors, at Cooney Chevrolet and Cadillac. We're also at Pendragon stores, Hornburg. We also we'll have them in Penske stores as well. But we're really, really, really excited, about, one, you making the time, to talk to me today, but the opportunity that's out here to have a product that I think really brings value.
No, man. Well, I appreciate that, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you. And have a good rest of your day, man.
Yeah, you the same. You the same. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit the show's website at buildingthefutureshow.com. Also check us out on Facebook at Building the Future Show and follow us on Twitter at Building Show. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.